Hey, I'm Nathan with Blue Oak. Today we've got a tree health concern. We got hired to address why this ornamental cherry is exhibiting signs of chlorosis and some leaf drop. So it's the middle of summer. It's not supposed to be dropping leaves this time of year. The client hired me for some consultation and wanted to know. So there's three things that we're going to talk about, which could all be contributing to these symptoms. And then we're gonna talk about our prescription and we're gonna implement that, and hopefully this will be a really quick, to the point video. So my first thing when I'm consulting or assessing a tree is I wanna see the root flare. Okay, I like to see the root flare. I don't focus as much on the crown at first until I look at the root flare. This root flare looks really good. There are some, lawnmower injuries and stuff on these surface roots. That's pretty common. It's not ideal, but the root flare is above ground, and there's like very minor evidence of any girdling roots. Like this is nothing compared to what we've seen before. There's a little bit of weeds, like privet and such, and some vines and thorns and things that could be taken out to reduce competition with the root zone, but really it's a good starting point right here. The next thing I'm looking at is the root, like the soil conditions of the root zone. I have a soil probe and I'm just trying to figure out how compacted it is. This clay soil that I'm standing on is very compacted. Okay, it is very, very compacted. Compacted soil limits oxygen and water availability to the root zone, and it does contribute to stressful conditions for the tree, and it can contribute to symptoms of early leaf drop and even chlorosis, because it's interrupting that respiration of the root zone and the nutrient, well, not the nutrient availability so much, but the water availability. So that was one finding right away. All right, then we're going to step back. We're going to look at the tree, the whole crown. I see that it's still viable all the way to the very top of its crown. It just has, a lot of leaf drop happening. The clients were also concerned about these holes all through the leaves, which could be caused by a little insect pest.
I forgot to mention bacterial or fungal pests as well, which in this case might even be more probable. Further assessment and research would be required to identify the specific pest that we were dealing with, but the strategy that I'm about to go over still generally applies, regardless of whether it's insect, fungal, or bacterial.
When a tree is stressed out, it's already weaker. So rather than worrying about the insect pest, I typically look at the site, because the site is what can predispose the tree to the stress in the first place. Typically, unless we're dealing with an invasive species of pest, a healthy tree is going to have good defense systems in place and is going to be able to withstand a pest. So my theory is you fix the growing conditions, which are already stressful for the tree, these pre-existing conditions like lending the tree to a stressful state. You fix those, and then the defense systems will go back up, and then the pest will become a thing of the past, and you don't even have to use chemicals to control it. So I don't really care that much about the pest on the leaves or the evidence of holes on the leaves. The tree will produce new leaves next season, and it'll be just fine if we can fix the growing conditions. All right, so another condition which lends to extreme stress for trees is drought. Our spring and our early summer were just void of rainfall almost completely, like very abnormal spring we had this year. Very little rainfall. A lot of trees have exhibited symptoms of stress just due to drought. So premature leaf drop and chlorosis are also symptoms that could be caused by drought. And then the final thing, and this is more of the site history that we need to consider, is herbicides that have been applied and therefore herbicidal injury potential. So you can see this strip of dead grass where the previous owners of this residence kind of went crazy with weed killer, and then they really went crazy with it up here. And unfortunately, this ground is higher than the ground down there, and so even though this was applied, they would have thought it was applied far away from the tree, it can leach down into the soil. There's a very good chance, because the roots of this tree, if they're healthy, have extended 2 to 3 times the spread of the crown. So where I'm standing right here, this is the drip line, okay? This is called the drip line of the crown. The roots could go 2 to 3 times this distance of radius from the trunk. These herbicides got into the root zone more than likely. Okay, that's the point. So we've got herbicidal injury as a likely thing that we're dealing with here as well. Once again, premature leaf drop and chlorosis can be symptoms of herbicidal injury. So those 3 factors, it might be a mix of all 3, have contributed to the stress of this tree, but the tree looks like it could just bounce back as long as it's taken care of. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to move into prescription here. First thing that we're going to address is this compacted soil. That's something that we can address. We don't want to apply fertilizers right now because of the herbicidal injury. That's the only reason there. I was going to prescribe Nutriroot to help alleviate these drought conditions that it's been experiencing. But after looking back on the label and stuff, even Nutriroot, which is a pretty light fertilizer, it's an organic fertilizer, even that, it says don't apply after herbicidal injury. So we've struck that off the list, and we're just going to focus on 2 big remedies. Soil aeration via radial trenching with an Airspade, and then mulch, organic chips, properly applied organic chips. And I guess with that, we'll include weeding out some of these other trees, like the invasive privet. We'll weed that out. But what that's going to do is it's going to open up the root zone to airflow and water availability, and it's going to promote new root growth. That's what the tree needs more than anything right now, is to be able to have unencumbered, non-woody root growth, like fine absorbing roots, to be able to put those out with ease. Then the mulch is going to be a fantastic remedy. Let's just talk about the benefits of mulch. Let's just start there. I think there's like 7 major benefits. Let me see if I can go through them all. One would be mechanical barrier. Mulch provides a mechanical barrier against things like lawnmower injury, string trimmer damage. See that like these surface roots, a lot of them have been damaged by lawnmower, and the tree looks like it's responding decently to that, but like these are all entry points for decay to get in. Aggressive root rot pathogens can take advantage at the right time of the year. The tree sustains an injury to its roots. Okay, so that's one of the first things that mulch does, is it provides a good mechanical barrier to prevent that. It also reduces our compaction on the root zone. Even as we walk around, we're compacting the ground further and further. So not just driving cars and machinery, but even just walking around or having dogs tied to the tree, that can compact the soil over time. And mulch kind of provides a barrier to protect against that. Mulch is a moisture retention layer. It retains moisture after rainfall and from like the dew and stuff like that. It just keeps the soil from drying out so quickly during periods of drought, so that's great. It's a thermal insulator during periods of intense heat or intense cold. So it insulates the root zone for the temperature, optimal temperature. It produces nutrients as it decomposes, okay? So it kind of doesn't feed the tree, because technically feeding the tree is only through light. The sun is what feeds the tree. But it provides essential elements that the tree needs, okay, as it breaks down. And then the biggest thing that mulch does, if it's organic, is it improves the organic activity. So it brings in things like earthworms and beneficial fungi, mycorrhizal fungi, for example. And that activity encourages root development, and often the mycorrhizal fungi will form symbiotic relationships with the tree roots and increase their uptake of water and essential elements as much as 100 times. So it's just a tremendous relationship which can take place. And then that organic activity will also further aerate the soil so that the client doesn't have to have us come out every year and provide an aeration service. Like, once a good layer of mulch is down, it should take care of itself. It should start just kind of breaking down, and earthworms will do that aeration for this tree from then on. Okay, so another thing that mulch does is it reduces competition with grass. And there are some schools of thought out there that say that plants put out signals into the soil to tell like bacteria and fungus that they prefer to have a relationship with, to kind of attract them. Well, grass puts out kind of different signals than trees do. And this can change the pH in the root zone over time based on the amount of bacteria versus fungus is in your soil. It's totally beyond me here, but again, we're just talking about establishing a great cultural environment for the tree to grow in. We cut down on the competition of grass by smothering it with mulch, and the tree roots are going to be even happier because now they don't have to compete with grass, and they're getting to send out their signals better than the grass is able to send out its signals, right? So we want the tree to thrive, and the grass in the root zone we don't care about. So those are some benefits of mulch. We're going to go ahead and show what this looks like in action. Stay tuned.
Early into it, I realized that I hadn't blown away the leaf litter, so I went ahead and took time to do that because we didn't want to mix it in with the trenches. Same reason we don't want to mix mulch in with these trenches. It can rob the soil of nitrogen as it breaks down. We got 7 2-cubic foot bags of soil, and we spaced them evenly around the tree to make sure that we got even coverage. This was just some nutrient-enriched soil used to backfill the trenches, but we raked in as much of the native soil as possible because otherwise this was not going to be enough to fill the trenches. After the aeration trenches were finished and some of that backfill soil was applied, it was time to lay down chips. We were shooting to lay down a chip layer of 2 to 4 inches thickness, and it's important not to incorporate them into the aeration trenches because they do temporarily rob the soil of nitrogen as they break down. So that's as we were putting chips down where I had already finished and where they had already raked it even. We went to the drip line almost with these chips. We had enough to do that, which was great for the tree, even though it was a little more work for us. When you are applying chips, again, shoot for 2 to 4 inch thickness. It's better to go wider and cover more area of the root zone than it is to apply thickness. And definitely do not bury the trunk or the root flare. That will cause more harm than good. But anyways, this tree was looking a lot better after we got finished. This was definitely a huge improvement to the root zone, and a healthy root zone will help a tree recover from stress. Well, thanks for checking this video out. Hope it was educational. Be blessed.